want to bring back civil attorney and former prosecutor Kirk Davis once again. So you heard from Chanley. It's this kind of nice guy picture, no prior violent history that the defense really seems to be promoting in this case. What else do you think they're really going to try to hang their hat on?
Well, I agree, Joy. I think that's going to be their main argument, and you know, it's tough. I mean, here in our state, I think if I'd been the prosecutor, here in Washington State, I would have tried to exclude that evidence on sort of, you know, just because he hasn't committed a crime in the past doesn't mean that he's not capable of committing one here. So I think that, but I do think that that's going to be the major thing, right? I mean, you just look at the young man. I mean, how is it conceivable he committed that crime? And then try to decouple the evidence, try to unlink that from him. I mean, it's a really tough one. I do not envy the defense their job, because I think it's the amount of circumstantial evidence here is overwhelming.
Yeah, and what was also overwhelming was what we heard from the medical examiner today, Mr. Beaver. I think we have a clip of that, if we can play that for our viewers.
Perform this autopsy. Did you, because of the number of stab wounds, as you mentioned, did you do them in groupings? Did you try to group them differently than you normally would?
Yes, sir. Once the number gets up around 100, it really makes the autopsy report and any description very bulky. So I try to group them where they're closely together and related. So yes, I'll group them into groups of 5 or 6 or 8 in a certain area.
And you mentioned the number 100. Were you able to count the number of stab wounds as you observed Ms. Josephson's body?
Yes, it's over 100. I think somewhere around 120. But gets to a point where it's not really, it doesn't really add much to the report.
Yeah, I mean, that's really something. You know, I believe it was 120 later in the testimony that he actually said. And it's really disturbing when you hear those details. Yet, that doesn't mean necessarily that the defendant is responsible. So how does this play for the jury?
No, that's absolutely right, Joy. I mean, the emotion that comes along with that, just hearing, and you see the picture of she looks like a lovely young person. Your heart goes out to her and her family, and you just think, oh my goodness, when you're on that jury and you hear about these details, it's horrifying. And yet at the same time, if you're the defense, you got to say, yes, we understand this is horrifying, but please try to put aside your emotions about what happened here and wanting to hold somebody accountable, and really look at this evidence here. Does this prove beyond a reasonable doubt that our client did it? I mean, it's a tough job, but that's what it's got to have to be here.
I mean, but is the jury going to say, well, we don't see any other possible suspects for this? You know, that hasn't been presented to us. Do you think that they're going to say, well, if not him, then who?
Right. I mean, I think that is a danger here. Usually you want to have, with this amount of overwhelming evidence, you want to have a counter narrative. You want to be able to say, well, you know, did they investigate this person? You know, this person had a grudge against the victim or something along those lines. And if you don't have anything like that, wow, it's just going to be super difficult to come up with a not guilty, I think, in this case.
Yeah, well, you know, and we've heard quite a lot of testimony from the medical examiner, and we're going to continue breaking some of that down ahead as we continue